Mojeed Alabi is right here in our studios. Thank you so much for coming around.
Thank you so much.
And we also have an ICT specialist, Temitayo Agemo-Okuboyejo, who joins us virtually for this. Temitayo, thank you so much for coming around.
Thank you for having me, and good evening to you.
All right. So I'll start with Mojeed. I mean, you just listened to the parents and, of course, the candidates share their thoughts as regards the conduct of the UTME this year. But then how would you describe it in terms of the preparation, the conduct, and the aftermath? Because some people are saying that the handling itself was flawed.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we have come to the same issue that we have always raised. Personally, I wouldn't have expected the examination body to have asked the examination to be retaken so suddenly. I would have expected that we allow the system to calm down. Though WAEC is ongoing, SSE conducted by WAEC is going on, and I know that admission has a particular period that we conduct it. It starts around September. But when you look at probably because JAMB was also disturbed by what actually happened in the first instance, and as a result of that, he wanted to at least because when you look at the conditions, many of these students were in shock. There was no way. If you talk to psychologists, I'm no one, but when you look at the kind of the period of the examination, some of them were just coming out of the shock. Some of them were still crying for that period. You should have allowed them, give them some kind of moment and said, oh, this exam is going at least minimum of a week. I will have and some of them may have even traveled out of the places where they took their exams. I'm aware that in some centers in Lagos, the first batch, about 30-something of them could not sit the exam. So that kind of disruptions wouldn't have been allowed to take place again. I'm not sure WAEC is conducting exams on weekends. We could have allowed the weekends to be used to conduct this the receipts. So these are the kind of the observations that I have, that ordinarily if I had my way, I would have said, just create time for them. Let them be out of their shock. Some of them needed some kind of psychological help. This will have helped them to at least overcome the kind of the challenge that they had initially. All
right, let me come to Temitayo. I mean, you're an ICT specialist. What normally causes systems glitch, or should I say failure? And in this case, jams, could it have been avoided too?
So to begin with, I want to commend the CEO of Educare, Alex Onya, who did a fantastic job in reviewing JAMB's process and was very firm in standing his ground to prove to JAMB that there were indeed errors, or there were indeed glitches within the process. With regards to what would cause a glitch or cause an error, all manner of reasons. In fact, I seem to recall that the vendor that JAMB procured to deliver on certain parts of the administration of the process has now been dropped. So this is essentially a company that was, procured to provide a specific side of the service, had not provided that service within the parameters that they were given. So that's for me is good news. But with regards to how JAMB itself has handled the matter, personally, I am a little disappointed because, again, like I said, if we didn't have responsible citizens like Alex Onya standing his ground, we would have adduced the mass failure not to problems with the system itself, but to students just doing poorly. In fact, if we all recall, this was the narrative, or this was the headline that we all started out with, until those who had the expertise to review the process were able to conclusively tell all of us that there were indeed problems with the technical administration of how the exam was delivered, essentially leaving students out. So any process that leaves close to over 20% of the candidates in a wrong footing with regards to writing their exams seriously needs to be scrutinized. And I would think that the review that has been, the review process that has been announced by JAMB itself will reveal what other errors are within the system and appropriate measures will be taken going forward.
All right, so I come to Mojeed. Now, it seems like chaos with JAMB over this particular exercise. I mean, looking at it holistically, 6:30 a.m. scheduled time, the glitch, the slow in response when there was a public outcry. Now, some candidates who did not even have issues with their results also have to resit it. If you're in that position, what would you have done differently, most especially to even avert this chaos?
Yeah, thank you so much. When you look at it, any system that is run by human tends to definitely will have some issues. You cannot have a perfect system. It doesn't exist anywhere. When challenges happen, we must also commend those who have come up and those who have challenged the system. And we must also commend the institution for coming up and being open enough. We saw a situation where stakeholders actually gathered to review the entire process, and for coming up, it's something that is very strange in our system. When you see people who are holding public sensitive positions coming up to say, yes, we agree that we held on this, because we are human beings. But when you look at it, systems, they will say there is no perfect system anywhere. We can only learn over time, especially when you consider the kind of the environment where we are operating. We are in Nigeria, and we understand what operates in Nigeria. This is a place where you have problem with power, where you can have problem with infrastructure, where cable can cut at any point in time, where anything could happen. We are not in the developed world, where you know that the basic facilities are already there. We must also commend the system. We knew what we used to experience, and that is why you see a lot of people challenging, even the SSE being conducted, where you have a lot of miracle centers. We knew what we used to have in the past, where you have those that we regard as tutorial center constituting miracle centers, people going online to show a whole lot of things. To combat all these challenges, it took a whole lot. Maybe because I was part, as the chairman of Education Writers Association of Nigeria, I've covered education in Nigeria for more than 10 years. And I've traveled around the country. I know what it was, and I know what it is. I knew when we had some kind of improvement. So when you have these kind of challenges, they are not unexpected. They can happen, but what is the response? We must also commend the organization for responding in a manner that at least we agree that we held, and how do we improve on the system? One of the measures is removing the kind of the vendor who could not meet up with the challenge. So if I were to be in the position of authority at the same time, one, I will have also sat down, just like I said earlier, not rushing the candidates again, because a simple mistake, simple issue can lead to more problems. So what I would expect also is that all of us will go back, we go and look inward. How do we avert this kind of challenges going forward? In terms of technology, technology has helped, because I can tell you, with the use of CCTV, we have really identified a whole lot. People who are trying to engage in fraud in malpractices, using so many things to cover CCTV, doing a lot of things, but this man has been able to at least resolve some of these issues, especially when we look at where we are coming from and where we are now.
All right, Temitayo, now the JAMB registrar said the system glitch was caused by an unavoidable error, and Mojeed is also saying that because we're in this climb, paraphrasing now, we've not really gotten there yet technologically. Now, can this be regarded as a one-off, or the body is not well optimized for a tech-driven exercise? Some people are saying probably we should just go back to the paper-based kind of exam, because we saw this kind of glitch happen during the presidential election. So
I disagree with a point that Mr. Mojeed made about there's no perfect system, and therefore we should perhaps do certain things. So whilst it is true that there's no perfect system anywhere, as far as I know, organizations should consistently work on ensuring a high efficiency of their process. And what that means is a consistent review process that identifies issues and ensures that those issues are resolved. So it's not unusual for people who work in this environment, in the IT space, to have a lessons learned process after every JAMB exam is taken, to ensure that a mistake that has occurred previously doesn't occur again. Now, my concern is that the only reason why, in my opinion, the only reason why JAMB would eventually admit to its own culpability in this issue is because we had someone who was an expert and who had reviewed the process and was certain that there were issues, and they stood their ground. Look, let's not forget that we all started out this entire conversation with putting the blame on, first, the students. It was all about how students were consistently performing poorly year in, year out. Then, secondly, we went on to the quality of education, the terribility of the curriculum. But then, because people who had a better understanding of how these things work stood their ground, and they were able to provide evidence which JAMB had no response to. They had no alternative answers to. They could not disprove this evidence, and therefore the only choice was to admit these errors. So on that note, I'm sorry to say, putting the blame on how systems are not perfect anywhere, I don't agree with that point. So errors like this should really, really be an outlier. It should be something that happens, like it should be what we call a black swan event, something that doesn't happen often. But then every year we have one complaint or another to make about JAMB. In fact, this exam, before the students sat those exams, there were issues around the timing that students had been allocated. So some students complained about being posted to far-flung places from where they lived. Others complained about being told to be at the center at 6 a.m. because JAMB wanted to avert lateness. I mean, what kind of exam do people have to go and sit at 6 a.m., 16, 17-year-olds? And then finally, my other issues is that, as commendable as Professor Loede has been about eventually admitting the errors within the system. We don't know what the errors are. They haven't told us. They just said they were unavoidable. But it does depend, like, what kind of due diligence were made on these vendors? Were there pilot tests? I mean, there are several tests that could have been done, but we don't know what they are. And because we don't know what they are, it's hard to say what kind of alternatives or what kind of improvisements or improvements can be suggested offhand right now. So moving forward, what I would like to see, or what would be nice, would be going forward to not equate integrity with competence. Both are important for anyone to be able to do their job and do it well. However, because I come across a man of integrity who is not a qualified doctor, I wouldn't let them give me treatment. I wouldn't let them diagnose me.
Temitayo.
If that is not their area of competence, then perhaps we need to be looking at redeploying people and have people deliver to the Nigerian state in areas of their competence.
Well, I guess that's one area we need to look at, optimizing competency when it comes to delivering on tasks like this. Thank you so much, Temitayo Agemo-Okuboyejo, and of course, Mojeed Alabi, for coming around to talk about this. This conversation will continue, and definitely we will bring you to speak more on it.